All right, joining us right now is a singer, a songwriter, a star, a former TNA interviewer, and TNA manager as well. Of course, she is the world famous Billboard charts award winning Goldy Locks. Goldy Locks, welcome to the Two Man Power Trip.
Wow,
Not bad, right?
that's some good. See, and I asked to do some
Yeah.
research on you too, so I'm gonna have to build up your fanfare now.
Yes.
That was great.
Yeah.
Isn't
So
that
what's
fun?
going on with you? What is going on? Like, what's going? Because I see you're all over the place. Your band's all over the place. What's going on? I believe it's
I
all
can't
to you. What's
I
going on with
can't
that?
wait for our band to be all over the place. We've just been COVIDing like so many people have and wrestlers. And, I wish I could just shoot on some things that I can't normally online. I would appreciate if you'd
Mm-hmm.
allow me to do that. But,
Yep.
we're a regular rock band, John. So what would you like me to call you?
You can call me John. That's
Okay,
good.
no, if I was supposed to call you Two Man Power, what?
John is good.
So we're just a regular rock band. We're not a Christian rock band, and I try to lead a good life and everything, but I'm not perfect and a little salty and rough around the edges. So when the All to You song was written, I co-wrote it with a previous bandmate, and I just asked him. I said, do you believe in God? And, he was like, yeah. And I just said, oh, he's like, well, why, who doesn't? Or I'm like, oh, a lot of people don't, or people have different views. And I said, I really hear this music to be like, it's speaking to me. It's saying something. So right off the bat, I felt inspired to write something that was like a modern day Jesus coming back. And then ironically, James Storm plays him in the video. And it was an inspired song from the very, very, very beginning. And now that I remember when we were working on the video took 9 months. The song took 2 years to record because it's 158 mixes and it's in many different languages. And have you ever noticed, like, when you ask a friend for help or just a little extra something, if you're down and out, it seems like people really want to help you.
Yes.
But when you start to like get some momentum or things change, all of a sudden people just get like weird. And so many people along the way of the video being finished, whatnot, they just said like, well, I wouldn't even worry about going for a Dove Award. Like you'll never get that. Or I don't think this is a very good song for the video. It's not a good fit. Or I don't think the music's very good, or the mix is very good. Or somebody even said, I just scratch everything and recut the whole thing. And I don't think your vocals are strong enough. I mean, just like every single thing, John, that you could possibly crap on somebody, they just kept throwing it. And then maybe March, I reached out to somebody and I just said, could I get your help on advice on going for a Dove Award? And he sent me back this text message that was just like this litany of every possible reason again why I shouldn't even waste my breath or time. Like, you have to have massive airplay. You have to have massive buku dollars, backing you, blah, blah, blah. I mean, he just went on and on and on. And you're not what the Dove Awards would want. Just on and on. And I kind of forgot about it. Well, a couple weeks ago rolled around and all of a sudden our record label said, All to You is nominated for first ballot Dove Award. So out of like thousands of songs, and I was just like, I couldn't even believe it. All I could think of is, all right, somebody likes me somewhere and like the band, and like they pulled a favor, some strings or something. But I guess the video, the PSA for suicide prevention, which I reached out to you about, was doing well and it was resonating with people, and they thought enough of it at the GMA, the Gospel Music Association, to nominate it. But there's just a part of me that wants to, the guy that wrote all that stuff back, somebody suggested he might be a voting member of the GMA. So I just like reached out to him, like emailed him, hey, it's Goldy. We're on the contemporary Christian category. Could I please ask you for a vote? Nothing. Texted him. He gave me this. Well, I'm too busy to read my emails. I have on and on. I was just like, oh my God, get over yourself, bro, please. And then I texted him, hey, I just was asking for a vote. And I hadn't texted him since March. And I look back and, oh my God, the same guy that like, so maybe he thought I was like sticking it in his face, but I wasn't.
Right.
But it felt good
maybe he thought you were. Yeah. Yep.
but I mean, that's not so like far removed of anything like the Dove Awards or GMAs would ever want to like, I don't know, like I'm not, you know what I'm saying? It just was
Yeah.
like, it was just funny. They wouldn't want to have somebody be like that. But yeah, I don't know. Hindsight, it's kind of funny. So we're just really excited. And the next round is August 10th. And then you find out if you're on that ballot. And then the final one's in October. And it would be really cool to have that.
Awesome. Congratulations.
You're very
doing
kind.
very well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I have nobody to tell. Nobody, my friends just don't get it. And yeah, whatever. You just keep it to yourself.
Right. So you got James Storm, you said, for the video. I guess you guys go back a ways, right? Probably all the way to the back beginning of Excuse You there.
Hold on. I have to cough. I'm going to just go off for just 1 second.
Yep.
Can you take me off? I went down the wrong pipe.
Yeah, no problem. Yes. So Goldie right now is a little bit off screen. She's having some difficulty. I will wait 1 second. I'll give her privacy or respect until she pops back up.
Good Lord.
She's good. Okay.
Here
good.
I am. Look at him crying. Yes, I'm crying for James Storm. Yeah, James Storm was really cool. Alan Funk.
I mentioned James Storm and you start going crazy. Yeah.
He would pop for that hard.
Yeah.
James Storm, Alan Funk, and Chase Stevens. And it was just the most brilliant night ever. Those guys are just consummate pros. James showed up with his grandfather's crucifix that his granddad gave him before he passed. He had on a blazer with like a cross on the back. He really, really thought it out. I was like, bro, this is so cool. It looks like I have like a really bad cocaine habit, which I don't. I just keep itching my nose. So run with that one. But I don't know why. I tried a new foundation tonight, John, and it's making me itch.
Okay. All right,
yeah,
no
woman problems. So yeah, it was a great night. During the fight scene, we were limited on production because that was the very last thing that we shot. So yours truly was running out of money. And so we had our lights and everything, but we had to just keep moving the lights instead of leaving them everywhere. We had to conserve the lights.
Mm-hmm.
So we were shooting the real heavy fight scene, the suitcase over the head, garbage can lid. Everything was just brawling, total like ECW style. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden I heard this like walking and somebody was blocking, like just like this. The shadow was coming through. They were blocking the light. And I looked behind me and I'm like, oh no. Well, it was a cop. It was an officer coming. And all I did is I like ran up to her and I was like, just like quiet. Like, and then she looked and and it resonated like somebody. And I just said, oh my God, are you kidding me? And my language was so colorful. And she was like, well, we got to report that somebody's being beaten. And I was just like, I said, this is our PSA for suicide prevention. This is James Storm. This is, and I like gave him like the rundown of like all of their accolades and their calling card. And like, she just went, have a good night, have a good night. And turned around and I was like, no, come back here, come say hi. And then they had the whole bunch of squad cars up. But I was just like, who calls the police on, like Chase Stevens made the comment. He's like, anytime that I like to assault someone and beat them to death, I like to have it properly lit. I like to make sure there's a lot of cameras to document. He was hysterical. They were great. But yeah, it was a really, really, really good night. Very powerful.
So James Storm, obviously, your relationship with him goes back to probably 2002 to TNA. So how did you actually get into TNA? Not only meet him, but how did you get into TNA all the way back then?
So I was in a really weird record deal, and the main record executive who I was also dating at the time. So it was very awkward, but and he was a lot older than I was. I was pretty young and very controlling. I will say I learned a lot from the deal. I have to keep coughing. Hold on 1 second. I never did clear that. I learned a lot from that situation, but like when you go back in time and you look at things and it's just like it was toxic and disruptive. And I remember him telling me one time in Minnesota that there's this lawyer that he's working with to sign another act. And she said something about this new promotion that was starting up, but it was wrestling. And he's like, we're from Minnesota. And I know that you watched wrestling and I know that you were in the same town as Kurt Hennig and Vern Gagne. And there's a couple of other greats that hail from Minnesota, Jesse the Body. Mm-hmm. And he just said, do you think you'd want to go for the backstage interviewer role? And I'm like, I'm thinking, John, like, I want to do anything I can to get out of here. Like, I want to just somebody take me away from this mess that I'm in. I just didn't like it. It was not good. So we met. I was flying back and forth from Los Angeles to Minnesota, Los Angeles to Minnesota. And we met with the lawyer on Chin Chins in Hollywood. And I can't remember if that was our first or our second meeting, but she kept saying if I only had like an audition piece or something that showed her fire or some spunk or some spice. And I had gone into a Singular, maybe it was some sort of cricket store, and cut a promo on the guy working there. My friend came in with like a little hat cam and was filming from the stairs, like just chaos, which later on that same video Vince Russo put on TNA. It was a cell phone catastrophe. This was like, this is what Goldy does on her off days or on the weekend. And I cut this promo and I had it, but it was just like a really crude camera, just some junky little thing that we got from Radio Shack and duct taped to his hat. It had a little button on it so you could zoom in and out. And she kept saying, if only I had something, and I had a CD, had a DVD. And I was like, I have something. And I just remember my ex and business partner kicking me really hard under the table, like cutting skin, bleeding. And I could feel like the blood running down my shin. And he just looked at me like, it's not good enough. That's not good enough. Nothing with him was ever good enough. Like, he just was somebody that was self-sabotaging, paralyzed himself constantly. He could never, ever finish anything, and to each his own. But I just remember finally, I think I grabbed her arm, had the DVD, and I said, I have this. And like, the look on his face was like he was going to beat the crap out of me the minute that she was gone. But the DVD made it to, isn't it weird how that happens? Like, the DVD made it to Jeff Jarrett and Jeff. Yep. And I think she said like there was interest, but that was it. And that's all that I needed to get on a plane. They didn't have Uber back then. I took a cab. I lied about where I was going to my person, and I took a flight to Nashville and cabbed it to Hendersonville, Tennessee, which is right down the road from where I live now, which is so weird. And it took me 3 trips of basically soliciting the Jarrett, saying I'm the right person for this job. And I'll never forget Jeff sitting back, and then their office was real beautifully decorated. And they had this bowl of like those decorative gourds. They're like round balls with seeds glued on them. And yeah. Like real Southern charm. And he just said, Goldy. And he motioned and referenced like a stack of manila envelopes, like this tall. He just said, look at all these girls that want this gig. Look at all these girls. And then he'd pull one out and he'd look at her. And he pulled another one out and he's like, look at her. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, I mean, look at her. And I just thought to myself, and I walked over to that bowl of gourds and I took 2 of them in my hands and I stuffed them down my shirt and my bra. And I'm like, well, look at me, Mr. Jarrett. He kind of looked at me and I said, I don't see anybody else here. I said, I've visited you 3 times. And I think this time was Labor or Memorial Day. And I just showed up. I didn't even know if they'd or not. They were. And I just said, I've come 3 times. I've traveled 3 times, flown my own ticket. And I have never seen anybody in your lobby or in your office. So it looks like I'm the best person for the job. And he just smiled and we went out to lunch. And I'll never forget, they were talking about the Harris twins. Do you remember them?
Oh, of course. Ron and Don. Yeah. Yep.
So they're talking about the Harris twins, and I'm sitting here like a little nervous because I don't know like what's really going on. Like, my hair is all haywire. And he just kept saying, yeah, Ron and Don, they're good workers. They're really good workers. And I'm brand new to this business. And I just remember going, I know a lot of people that are really hard workers too. Like, I didn't understand what like they meant by workers. Yeah, so I was trying to like chime in, and I sounded like a freaking idiot. And then he's like, Goldy, no, worker is another term for wrestler. And I was like, all right. So, John, let me ask you, since you're so big into so many different wrestling avenues, what's the difference between a wrestler, a worker, and a jobber?
So really, you would just say like a wrestler is just like the common term for a wrestler. A good worker or a worker is somebody that's exceptional. Like they always say Bret Hart is a great worker. They say Jeff Jarrett is a great worker. Somebody that has better work rate than somebody else means their match quality is probably better. It's not just, it's not going to be very, very simplistic. It's going to be a really smart, better psychology, better worked match. Yeah. So Bret
Oh.
Hart, Jeff Jarrett, I mean, just a few examples would be considered good workers. And the jobbers, which they don't like that term, would be the carpenters or the guys that would maybe enhance the other guy. So he would be, the jobber would be losing. So he's jobbing to the other guy.
Now I get it. All these years
Yes.
in wrestling, I
Yes.
didn't even know.
Yes.
And I'll be asking you that on my podcast.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, all right. A little quiz. All right. It's a good one. So you like obviously you end up getting the gig from Jeff Jarrett. When do you meet the one and only Vince Russo?
Oh God, I'm writing down that question because that's so good. I met Vince right when Vince came to TNA. And as you know, people have heard this story a few times. Vince wanted me to do a gimmick in the ring, and I wasn't comfortable with it, and just told him no. So he modified it, and I told him no. And I think the two no's in a row were enough that we just became really good friends. And one of the first memories I have of Vince Russo was when I was deemed the cat killer. And that is I boarded my cat and flew to Nashville. And apparently the boarder needed to take the cat to the vet. Something was wrong with it. And they were calling me to authorize the charge and the visit. Well, I was doing 7 interviews per pay-per-view running around, and I missed 3 calls. And by then the cat was dead. So I finished my pride and joy.
Sorry to hear that. Yeah.
Thank you. I got this voicemail, and it just basically said, Miss Goldy, I'm sorry to let you know, but your cat is gone. After I heard all that, can we authorize? I'm feeding back. Can you hear this?
No, nope.
You sure? Let me turn this down. Otherwise I'll go get headphones.
Nope. I'm hearing you. You're fine.
So they let me know that, and I just lost it. It was backstage, neck across the way from the locker room at the asylum in Nashville, and I was hysterical. And it was Vince that literally picked me up. I slid down on the wall, and Vince picked me up and walked me into like one of those famous back little crappy offices that you saw like Jeff getting smashed into. And it was just like Sarah, the white hair. She used to always be in this back little office in the TNA asylum. And he just sat there and he was like, whoa, don't cry. Don't cry. It's going to be okay. You know, so he was like super, super, super kind to me. And then he's like, who else came in? I think Sonny Siaki came in, and somebody else was down on their like knees, like with their hands in my lap, like helping me, like, come on, it's gonna be okay. And he's like, what are we gonna do? We can't have her crying. I tell you, we're gonna go to Hooters. We're gonna bring you to Hooters. And that was like, that was Vince's way of like fixing everything. It was like, go to Hooters and get you some wings and fries and stuff like that. You know, come on, over on 2nd Avenue. Come on. So that was Vince's way of being a dad. Is he was like, he's gonna take me to Hooters. That's the first time that I really met him, was when I killed my cat.
Wow. So what a intro. What a way to meet him.
Yeah, right.
So you meet Jeff Jarrett. Obviously, he hires you. You meet Russo. So what's the relationship like with Jeff Jarrett kind of going forward? Because obviously he knows that you're like, don't really know the business that well. If he's talking about workers, you're like, workers, stuff like that. So what's the relationship like with Jeff going forward?
It was really professional, but like strangely enough, and I didn't appreciate it at the time. I always say that hindsight in 2020 is they included me with all of the office meetings at the tables, and I was always invited to everything. And I just sat there like bored. Entitled, arrogant, sleepy. And it was Jerry Jarrett that really took a shine to me, not in a gross, icky way at all. Like, he was wonderful to me. But he just was always trying to like teach me the business. And I think Jeff could have taken me or left me. He didn't care in one way or the other. It was Jerry who really was cool. Jeff was always cool to me, but Jerry was extra cool. And then I think like Mike Tenay was just fed up with me being at the meetings and said like, we don't need her here anymore. I didn't even want to be there. What an idiot. Like, now I would have given anything to have just been there and listened and learned. but I didn't know what I was doing. Like I was just a singer who got invited to do this and knew it was on camera, and I do well on camera, and I'm a good interviewer and good speaker, good on the mic, but that I didn't understand the rest of the business or what you've dedicated your whole life to. I really screwed up on that.
So when, as you're kind of learning and learning the ropes and certain things, who's kind of like your mentor? Who's kind of leading you along the way to help you learn? Oh, nobody. Oh, so you had nobody, not even Russo, not even nobody's helping you
I mean,
along.
Russo helped me more or less a little bit later. Like he was just so busy when he came in.
Right.
You know, I mean, Russo was running around like a chicken with his head cut off because the copy was changing constantly. And you remember those were live pay-per-views. You know, there was nothing that was pre-taped. So you got to get it right the first time. And I just remember screwing up so many things. Like I'll never forget there was a James Storm and Chris Harris, something happened to them, some upset in the back locker room. They're like, go, like it really happened. Like, I think it was a shoot, you know? And and they were like, we have to change everything. And people were screaming. And I went back there and they're like, here's to you, back to you, Goldy. And I was just like, you know, James Storm, his leg is broken. And all I remember is, I can't remember if it was Terry Taylor or Vince wouldn't have yelled at me. Somebody yelled at me so hard and just said, you know, you idiot. Like you can't say that his leg is broken. You have to use words like it appears as though his leg is broken or his arm is broken. Like, and that was one of the biggest life lessons that I ever learned are your word choices, you know, and how that can make or break a network or a show or an episode or whatever, or a relationship or friendship. Is choose your words carefully. So, you know, I learned people say everything I needed to learn, I learned in kindergarten. Like everything in life I needed to learn, I learned from professional wrestling.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as you're kind of going along, it's so interesting that different characters and different people, like you said, James Storm and Chris Harris, and you know all the different guys. What about that one weird? It's so funny, but looking back, and Dusty Rhodes obviously has a great promo about it. I think it was either Puppet or Tio, basically, you know, beaten off in the garbage can. Remember that interview?
Yeah.
What was that like in that setup? Because that's just like, wait, like what the hell? And obviously later on, Dusty would make fun of it. But what was that like for you? Because that is one weird scenario.
I was so out of it, but this is how not plugged in I was. I didn't even realize that he was beaten off in a garbage can. No clue. I just thought it was a midget that they threw in a minute, and he was like, we didn't have a lot of lines. Like they just would say, go and here's your structure and get this message out or whatever. So I didn't have the stuff of Puppet beating off in a garbage can. I just was like, okay, go over there. He's in a garbage can. I didn't know. I just figured somebody threw the midget in a garbage can. And isn't that supposed to be funny? Or it's now like 18 years later, everything on that Wild Wild West show was so politically incorrect. And I think that's what made it great is like, I didn't even know he was jerking off. And I was so busy about, okay, Cobra, and then say the word Python. And then he says this. And then I'm like, don't you mean that? And I'm so worried about getting what I need to say out correctly and not screw up like I appeared to have a broken that I didn't even know till later. And then I'm like, oh my God. And there's a couple things like Jerry Lynn hit me with a couple things like open up your mouth and say, ah. And I was like, I didn't know that was coming. Or, you know, your lips are pretty, your pink lips. So I wasn't talking about those lips from the Dups. Like I had no idea like stuff was coming my way. And that's why I genuinely, sincerely looked so disgusted.
Right. Yeah, I remember the Dups. They were pretty vulgar, but that was kind of like a little bit of the TNA, the other version of it, where they had the tradition of NWA and then TNA and Sports Entertainment Extreme and Russo writing some crazy stuff. Were you ever just like, all right, besides obviously when you originally told Russo no, but was there ever some other things that made it on air you were very uncomfortable with that you definitely did not want to do?
No, because I signed up for professional wrestling. I flew out to Nashville 3 times. You know, it wasn't for a librarian gig. You know, there's so much wacky shit that was going on and people running around in the locker room, and they had the whole April gimmick where she was in the shower all the time. And like, I mean, we were so professional. Everybody was just a professional that we just did our job. And it was so hectic trying to get everything done on time because it was live. It was live pay-per-view. Like that's way different than all this other stuff that's going on. There wasn't a lot of time for hurt feelings. There wasn't a lot of time to be offended, or you just did your job and y'all went out to Hooters afterwards, on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a beautiful flow. I didn't appreciate it at the time. I don't give myself enough credit for how being a newbie or being any bee, how I was able to just keep that flow going. And then I had to change clothes every interview. I was in something different. So, which will lead us to because I had to change clothes and it was time sensitive, like Kurt Hennig would play ribs on me and like hide my stuff or chain it up or duct tape it to a chair, my suitcase, so that I couldn't change on time. And of course, I'd have to be in the same thing. So if you ever saw me in something twice, it's usually because Kurt found a way to hide everything.
That's great. What a ribber. That's great. That's so funny. Now, you weren't really familiar with wrestling beforehand? You weren't a fan at all before TNA?
It's not that I wasn't a fan. I mean, my grandma and I would watch it and I'd sit in her lap when I was a tiny girl, but like I just wasn't into it like you are, or I didn't watch it or follow, or I mean, I knew some of the greats obviously because I lived in Minnesota, but I wasn't plugged in. I couldn't tell you what matches they were talking about, or that was the most difficult thing for me is tag team title match. Like it took me 18 years to be able to have that roll off my tongue, or a gauntlet or this or that. Like I didn't know what they were talking about. I had to literally like memorize all this stuff and just go out there and say it. It was hard.
Pretty good though of you not to know anything and then be thrown into it like that and execute it, right? I mean, that's got to be pretty commendable, of course, to be able to pull that off.
I look back at it now and I'm proud of a lot of the stuff because I would memorize it in 3 minutes before the red light went on. They'd change the whole thing.
Right.
Which is super frustrating. It's like I'd stay to myself. I'd memorize. I'd learn my stuff. I'd try to get it down. And then they'd be like, oh, we're going to change this. And I'm like, I literally felt like I was going to self-combuscate. Like it was too much for me, but I managed to just get it right. You really only had one take.
Yeah.
That was it.
So was there a culture shock going from Minnesota to Nashville at all? Because that's a completely different kind of area.
It was Beverly Hills to Nashville. And the answer is yes. So I was in Beverly Hills, Bel Air, and Century City, like 3 of the most expensive zip codes in the United States. And then I came to Nashville, which is much different. And you know what, John, there's beautiful people everywhere. And there's crappy people everywhere, but the pace here from Los Angeles is way, way different. And I don't drink. I don't use anything. I'm just real squeaky clean when my mouth isn't. But when it comes to like substances and everything like that, like I don't use anything. And I mean, everybody here is just like you hang and you drink and you do your stuff. And I just feel like a weirdo half the time at things because I don't feel like I really fit in, but I'm cool with that. I'm not going to change my habits to fit in someplace, but like people do drink an awful lot here. Like that's just what you do.
Oh yeah. I could see that. It's a big party town.
It is.
Yeah. Now with you're down in Nashville, you're working for TNA. When do you start doing the theme songs and the theme music for some of the guys? Okay. So is that kind of why they wanted you to? They wanted you to do both, or they didn't even mention that?
No, I showed up in something that I have a Patreon / Goldy Locks. And today, actually, I had because it's part of the patrons. What do you call those? God, what was I going to say? Their benefits, their perks is to get behind the scenes access and stories and whatnot. And I don't know what, I think I did a podcast last week where they were really digging into the sexual harassment case that I could have had and didn't. And then somebody was asking a question about the theme songs, and Dodging Bullets came up, which was Trinity's theme song. And I remember writing that about the sexual harassment that I was experiencing every week. And it's called Dodging Bullets. And it was like, there's a line in there, something explode. Jerking off on my reputation. Like it's a very vile graphic song. And you only heard the first little bit of it for the entrance, but the actual song, it is vile for a younger woman to have written. But like, that's what my defense mechanism was, because I was in a bad situation and I didn't want anything to happen to jeopardize my new friends' jobs or mine. But I remember meeting there's a music person running around, and became a great friend. And that he was just like trying to find out what people liked so that he could go recreate it, because they didn't have the licensing to use,
Right.
Godsmack or, Pantera, but they could make something, recreate it to sound like that. And I just mentioned like, hey, I'm a singer and I'm a songwriter and I worked with Prince and everybody in Minneapolis and blah, 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 blah. And I had all this stuff and fanfare. And usually somebody would blow a chick off, but I was pretty persistent, just like I was getting the job.
Yep.
And we ended up going to the studio and working. And then he was like, wow, you're actually decent. And we started writing. And like, I mean, most of the stuff that you heard, I had something to do with. I was totally ghosting and behind the scenes, and it was a symbiotic relationship where I got production and things like that. And then they just used the piss out of all those songs, rightly
Yep.
so. That's what you do. We both, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And that's how I got started, was just right off the bat. I took all the photos. I had photo equipment that I brought from LA that I would leave at the asylum. I'd lock it up in one of the, like, what do you call it? Gates, fenced up things in there, and we'd lock it up.
Yep.
Strobes, and I'd bring my camera back and forth. I did the graphics for a lot of their CDs or their DVD covers. Again, I just did it to help out. Like,
Wow. Yeah. Very helpful. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I just wanted to see it. It was so low budget. Like when it first started, there was nothing. And I was like, let me help. And they did. And I've got I actually thought about that. I've got like all these photos from like the first week of TNA, the first month. And I think they're in the basement, and I'm going to dig them out and give them to patrons as like very quiet.
Great idea.
Quiet incentives, very quiet incentives. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I didn't realize that you were doing like the photos and the graphics and that. So who was the guy? Dale Oliver was the guy you're helping out do the music? Okay. What was like kind of the experience like with him? Because you always see his name all over the place. Obviously, you're kind of be ghosting a little bit, but you always see Dale Oliver all over the place with TNA music. What's he like?
He was very good to me. He was very good to me. Yeah, I'll just say that. I mean, it's hard to see. It's hard not to see. But you know what? Again, I knew what I signed up for, and I got a lot out of it. And I'm sure the studio time that was used by me to record all of this stuff, I mean, that's some nice gear I was using. So, I think more people have to be like that, not just be like me. It's all about me, but like, all right, you're working with somebody. And I mean, I didn't get paid for a lot of stuff. I didn't get paid for anything. But then again, I would have had to pay for studio time. I would have had to pay to work with a producer like that. So it all washes each other out, cancels each other out. But I get there's a lot of stuff that I did that nobody will ever know. It's fine. And there's a lot of stuff that like I'll see my name on it as far as singing on it, and it's not even me. And I don't even think it's good.
That's weird. They don't give you credit. They're like, okay, you sung this song.
Yeah,
Like,
this chick sucks. And it's like Goldy Locks singing. I'm like, that's not me. It's so obvious that it's not me. I have a very distinctive Fran Drescher, nasally, like Midwestern voice. And it's like, this woman clearly doesn't. And I'm sure she tried really. I don't know who the hell sang it. It doesn't matter. There's just things that I hear, and they'll say that's Goldie, and I'm like, no, it's not me. But then I can't say anything because I'll sound like a big dick. So
true. Then they put you on TV kind of as a manager, like an on-screen role. You know, you were with Abyss and Alex Shelley.
Yeah.
What did you think of them doing that? Did you enjoy that? Like that showing your range and playing?
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed all of it. I wish I could go back and manage right now. I would love to go back and just do the craziest thing that I possibly could. Like the most heel. Now I understand what a heel really is.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. And I get what I could have been doing. I get that I should have been worrying less about the stuff I was worrying about back then when I was a kid. And I should have been worrying about story development. I should have been cross promoting with other workers, wrestlers. There's so much, John, that I should have been doing. And I do wish I could go back and I have a decent fan base, support base. I don't like the word fan. I'm weird about it. I have a decent support base. The band has a decent support base. I've done a lot of TV since then. And I'd like to go back and kind of get a redo or a Tosh.0 redemption.
Yeah, that would be nice. I
But
think it was a couple weeks ago. I think you posted it actually. You had the black wig on, and
yeah,
Scott Hudson's like, Goldie, and you're like, yes. It was just so funny seeing like you playing that range of that character and playing something different. Did you enjoy that? Because it seemed like you were having a lot of fun doing that.
I loved it. It was my idea. I crashed a production meeting down West End, downtown Nashville. Jeff, Dutch, Vince, Jerry. I found out where that meeting was. I taped my face back and I had this wig on and I knocked on the door and I covered up the peephole and I was like knock 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 and I came in, they just were looking at me and I had sort of an accent like I did and they're just like what the fuck really
Yep.
and I just remember like looking at him saying that I've got an idea. And they're, who is this freak? Like Vince was just like, get this freaking freak out of here. And I was like, you guys, it's me. And like, they didn't get it. I'm like, it's me. They still didn't get it. I'm like, it's Goldie. Look, got the wig on. And I was like, look, I got this idea for a gimmick and I wanted to present it to you in the best way possible. Obviously it worked. I want to be a different character. I want her to go so far crazy, so split personality that I want to be a different character every week. And they bought it. They went for it. It was great. And then I look back at some of it now and I'm like, would I be in trouble even now for playing a Hispanic person? Is that where's the line now? I'm like, I'm playing a part of a Hispanic woman, but would somebody say that I'm a racist now? I just like, it's so crazy right now. Like it's upsetting. I speak 7 languages and one of them is Spanish. So I was like, I want to play a Hispanic woman. I want to come in and I want to look like a stereotypical, hood rat. This is got this and the gold tooth. And then, am I going to get criticized for that someday? I hope not. Cause it's like, that was me wanting to act and wanted to pay homage to a culture that I thoroughly admire and enjoy. And it's scary now because you look at like, this cancel culture and everybody's just calling everybody out for shit that happened like years ago, like some scorned bitch. It's just like, it's getting to be, if you don't have the balls to take care of stuff when it happens, just, I get it. I get it. I'm a female. I get it. I've chosen to handle things a different way. I have just gone head in and said, this is happening. What do you want to do about it?
It is crazy now because it almost seems like people are going back, not just in wrestling, but everywhere. It's like, oh, they played a character that was controversial, but there was just a character. I think some people have a problem realizing what's real and what's kind of a character on TV or
I think people are out of their minds. I think they're out of their freaking minds.
They're losing it. They're definitely losing it. Did you like working with Abyss, though? Abyss and Alex Shelley?
Abyss got me fired, but I enjoyed working with him up until he lied and said
that. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. So, but I mean, he was friends with my friends. He was always professional to work with. He was decent to me. I never had a problem with him. He wasn't my best friend. I went to him and told him that I was worried about a bump. He lied and said I was going to sue the company. I got fired. I mean, it's water under the bridge. Everybody knows that's why I got canned. Mm-hmm. He just ran his mouth. I guess I was getting too much TV time. I guess I was Vince's friend and Vince was putting me on a lot of different spots and maybe people were just sick of it and they're just like, this chick's got to go. And I don't blame anybody. If I was a wrestler, a full-time wrestler, and there was only so many minutes during the episode, during the show, then I probably would have wanted to see me go too, but I would have done it a different way. There's always like better ways to do things than to like throw somebody under the bus or lie. Because I mean, honestly, like I remember walking downtown with Jerry and Jeff to a club called Hurricanes saying, hey, my friend Chris has this other friend, Chris, who's doing a lot of work in Puerto Rico, who's really good. Because I was friends with James Storm and Chris Harris and their friend was Chris Abyss. And I just said, would you look at him? And because I was in with the office, like I said in the beginning. And I remember Jerry saying, all right, we'll take a look at him. Like, I've heard some things about him too. And I'm like, well, it sure would mean a lot to me. Wink, wink, Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, I wasn't responsible for him getting a job, but I'd have to think that some of the positive words I said had some influence. So it was just odd that I exited on the heels of trying to do something good for somebody else. But things always work out the way they're supposed to, and it'll roll around the way it is. I'm not mad at him. I've seen him since,
Mm-hmm.
It's all good.
Bitter at all about the exit from TNA or no?
Bitter?
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not bitter about it. I just wish, again, like, I wish I would have done a better job so that I was more valuable to the company. So again, I take personal responsibility right off the bat. Jeff was nice when he let me go. James Storm was the one who tipped me off that I was done that day. I knew it. They were doing the promos with, like, turn to the camera. You're, like, Goldy Locks, boom, you know what I'm talking about. And I just remember somebody, like, I was second to last, kind of like dodgeball in school because I wasn't very athletic. And I was always like second to last. And then that one girl that, like, I think the girl with cerebral palsy was always like the last one picked. I mean, oh God. And then it was me. So, and I felt so sorry for her. I'll never forget her. She didn't have cerebral palsy. She had fetal alcohol syndrome. So she would shake. And people would pick on her so bad, and I would beat the shit out of people. Like, I spent my entire grade school pounding kids for making fun of Lisa. So it wasn't cerebral palsy, but she shook and she couldn't hold anything. That's just a side note. Why the hell was I going down that rabbit hole? I remember I was the last one to do the promos, and somebody said, "What about Goldy?" And I just remember looking over at David Sahadi, who was directing it, and like he was looking at them, and he's just doing this, and like, and then he caught my eye, and I was just like, and I was like, I'm done. I knew it, and he walked away, and I was like, and then I bumped into James like a few minutes later, and I was like, I got this really weird feeling. He's like, Goldy, the word on the street is you're done. I'm like, why? What did I do? And he's like, you said you're going to sue the company. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, he's like, over the Black Hole Slam, James, I'm like, I never said that. If I was going to sue the company, it would have been in 2002 when some bad stuff happened. And I just went to Jerry and Jeff and Bob Ryder and said, this is what's happening. What do you want to do about it? And they helped in their own way figure it out, and then the company kept going. If I would have said anything, they would have lost their funding and it would have been done, and nobody would have had the chance to shine the way that they do. And I had too many new friends, and now I'm thinking I'm getting fired over a lie that was never said. I didn't say I was going to sue I don't even have those words in my vernacular. I said to Terry Taylor, I'm concerned about this bump. I've got a degenerative disc disease. I've got a pre-existing condition where if you even look at me wrong, I could be paralyzed. We've got a really big show in a couple of weeks with 3 Doors Down, Nickelback, Puddle of Mud. I'm really excited about it. And I can just see flying off whatever rope you want me to do or slam and not being able to get up afterwards. Could we do something else that's visually stimulating, but I won't, jeopardize my paralysis? And Terry was like, look, well, I'll look into it, and then I just remember trying to work with the Abyss, and he was like, well, don't worry about it. I'm like, well, of course I'm worried about it. I'm not a wrestler. What are you going to do to me?
Right.
Like, what's it going to look like? What do I do? And he's like, well, it just doesn't matter. Whatever I do, just be limp. Just be limp. And I'm like, okay, but like, are you picking me up by the hair, by the crotch, by the tits, by the back? Are you going to swing me around from the chandeliers? Like, what do I do? He goes, I don't know. Just don't worry about it. And I was really frustrated because I'm like, so this big 7-foot man is just going to flip me? I'm 5'4", 120 pounds. Like, well, I don't know what, I've never taken a bump before. And my questioning led to bullshit and just getting me fired. That was it.
Wow.
So I'm not bitter about it, John. I just wish I could redo it.
And he's not a small man. I mean, he's gigantic.
Oh, he's huge. Would you want him to pick you up?
Probably not. Probably not.
Well,
although I have seen him get bullied before by a 75-year-old man who's probably about 5'3". Yeah, at an autograph signing, the guy told him he was in his seat, and Abyss was very respectful and got up and walked away. It was actually really funny, like, to think back about it. Like, wow, I can't believe Abyss just like kind of was like, oh, okay to the guy. The guy was drunk and old, and it was a park bench right outside this convention center. But I just was like laughing at myself. I was like, wow, he just like punked out Abyss, who's what, 6'5", 350 pounds or whatever. Yeah.
He's always like very kind. Like, I don't have any riff with him at all over all these years. I just wish things would have played out differently. Or, I mean, who knows? Maybe I would have started like really wrestling. I did some indie stuff, but maybe I would have gotten hurt, John, or been paralyzed or died or whatever. I mean, I just think I told you at the beginning, I believe in God, and I believe your higher power guides you. And thank you for putting the thing on the bottom. I believe that your higher power guides you, and everything happens for a reason, and karma happens, and all kinds of things do. So I definitely, I don't ever sweat what happens. I just, if it comes to me not doing a good job or not performing well, I would have liked to have redone it.
And your music career probably was your number one goal, right? Number one focus. So you're saying Nickelback, Puddle of Mud, number one focus.
Sure. I mean, both were at the end of the day. I'm an entertainer and I'm a hybrid. So I don't consider myself to be just a musician or an artist or whatever. I'm an entrepreneur. So it's all about building a brand and a business. And the best part about being an entertainer and having that opportunity is I really like to bring value to people's lives, as cheesy as that sounds. Like, I like to entertain them and I like to make them feel good. And I like to put out content that's motivating and empowering. I'm just not about anything that's dark or dreary or that's going to put somebody down a bad path. I'm not into that. So I feel like I have a big responsibility with what I'm doing, and that's entertaining. And it's fueled by music and TV and wrestling and everything. I mean, all the stuff that I do now that keeps it all alive. And again, I don't hope, I expect that I get to go back and do something in wrestling sooner than later.
Nice. That would be great. What was the experience like? I know you're talking about, I know Pink too, you opened up for, and all these other big time bands, but what was it like with Prince? I feel like that's got to be such an interesting but weird, because he's one of those geniuses, but he's kind of like nuts. And what was it like
Yeah.
working with Prince?
You know, he's very quiet. I ended up working with, like, he would supervise it and then he'd pass it off to like his jabronis, his people. So I ended up working with a lot of his people. He said a few very powerful things to me in my life that impacted me and molded and sculpted me forever. One of the things was I was always working really, really late, and so was he. And I was always making things or graphics. I started out and got my deal and working with him through photography and graphic design and sewing. And same thing with TNA. I used to sew, create, design, make, manufacture a lot of the ring jackets and entrance.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that. Very cool.
I did. And a lot of those first TNA action figures, from Christopher Daniels to Lance Storm to James Storm, Chris Harris to the Naturals, like all those action figures are wearing the clothes that I designed and made. So it's really cool to like have all those, and know that I got a chance to work on all that stuff. So I mean, that's what I did for Paisley Park. That's what I did for all of the Minneapolis-based studios. I was a tiny kid. I mean, I was like 8, 9 years old, like bugging people and showing up on my bike with my like 3-ring binder with my tapes. I always had tapes to play everybody my songs, and I made this cover, and then finally I got in, and to answer your question, I was working on designing some stuff, and I had it all cut out, and I was making pop-up CD books and things where you opened it up and they came to life, but that's a lot of work and cut, and there's crap everywhere. And I just remember Prince like kind of popping the door a little bit, and he just kind of looked around and he said, "Oh, looks like you got yourself a regular factory here." And he just left, and I was like, and that's the name of like the factory photography, the factory by Goldy Locks. Like all of my stuff is the factory, because I was like, wow, Prince thought that my shithole of crap everywhere in his studio looked like a factory. Yeah. And that really resonated with me. And he was a brilliant man. I learned a lot from him. He stayed to himself. He just worked and worked and worked. I bumped into him in the common areas, but for the most part, like my day-to-day were people that he used to have in his band, and now he employed them as managers or producers or players. It's kind of like the backstage at WWE, like a lot of these guys. I just was watching Randy Orton cut some promo, and Ric Flair was by his side. And, that's the kind of people that I didn't work with Vince McMahon, pray tell, but I worked with, all of his people. So, I mean, we did, but not day to day. So
Right. Producers, agents, stuff like that.
exactly. But I mean, I'm very proud to be from Minneapolis and come from that scene and those camps. And it was good. It was beautiful times. And I remember when he died, my mom died before that. And then when he died, it just felt like there was like this chunk of my life was gone forever. And it almost screws with your own mortality because you're just like, wow, that's all gone. Like, Paisley Park and the Graffiti Bridge, that movie, or Purple Rain with Lake Victoria, Lake Minnetonka, like that's all stuff from like my neighborhood and like where Prince went to high school. I went to high school for a while, and where Prince lived, I lived 3 doors down from him, in Chanhassen, and I worked across the street. And it's just like when he died, it's really creepy. It's just, it just sets in like that part of your life it's gone. Like there's no more, it's just gone. It's very strange.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like you close that chapter and you can't get it back. Yeah,
No, it's gone. And like I remember being outside of the studio, leaving on the tour bus, leaving Paisley Park and having the gates open because there were always, a lot of security. And I remember my mom like embarrassing me, but my dad like standing there shaking his head, but she would pull out a handkerchief from her and she would do this gimmick, like, because my mom was 45 when she had me. She lived through the Depression. Her father worked the railroad. And that's what you did when people coming back from war, seeing them off to war, is you waved your white hanky. And like, what the hell is this gimmick that she's got? Just stop waving a hanky, Mom. You're embarrassing me in front of all these people. They're like, who's that woman out there with her handkerchief, like screaming, like, oh, be safe, my child. I'm just like, God. And then I think now, like, not only will that hanky never be waved again, but those gates will never be opened again. It's a museum now. He would die if he knew that. I mean, he already is dead, but he would roll over in his grave. He would not want what's going on there at all. He was super private, and all that stuff is on display now for everybody. And that was his shit. But, that whole chapter is just gone from my family to Minneapolis. That's where I'm born. That's where I'm from. Like, that was my family. It's just the most weird, nostalgic chapter closing that I can possibly describe. And when I hear his songs just out like at the mall or on a restaurant, I just like, you can just tell like my friends are just like, are you okay? And it's just like, I tweak out because it's too weird. It's too weird. It's not like we're great friends, but it really represents a big chunk of time for me.
Yep, makes sense. So when you leave Minnesota, you come to Nashville. How do you really kind of grow the Goldy Locks brand? Because, like you said, Pink, Nickelback, Puddle of Mudd. I mean, these huge acts that you're opening up and playing with and stuff. So how do you build that brand and become where you are today?
You don't. I mean, like, I'm just starting to figure out now, like over the last couple of years, so clueless. I remember a very famous producer I worked with that I met up with in LA, Michael Patterson. He helped me with all of these songs that became after I started working with Dale Oliver. I'm working with all of these gold record Grammy smackers in LA, and they're using some of that music because I'm like, you guys, like, check this out. Like, even though I was off of TNA, I still kept in touch with a lot of friends and like, oh my God, that's so amazing. Like, we've got to use that. I'm going to get them to use that as my entrance music. And so I'm just meeting all these amazing people and working on stuff that like I was on like one of Maynard from Tool's records, and all these like crazy metal people screaming on their stuff. Like, just, you're in LA, so just like, come sing on this. You don't even know what it's for. Again, more ghostwriting and things like that. But I mean, I got credit for this. But I remember Michael Patterson saying like, oh, you got to check out MySpace. I'm like, oh, that sounds dumb. That'll never work. Or, oh, you got to check out Facebook. Oh, that's dumb. That's never. I was just like, everything was always dumb and that's never going to work. And I'm just like, oh my God. And even now, when like Vince had me come on Bucket Full of Chicken Necks and I started with the Realm Network on Vince's brand, it's like, I didn't quite get it. I did the show every week, yada, yada. I should have tried harder. And then some stuff hit the fan and like he needed to restructure for whatever reason. And he's like, well, you can have your own show. And all my friends were like, oh, you should just break off on your own, do your own thing. And then I'm like, no, I'm not ready for that yet. But at least I had somewhat of a clue, John. Like, maybe there's something you don't know. And then like, of course, like being plugged into that, what an honor. To be able to tap into all these wonderful people. And at first I thought, there's a lot of assholes here. And she's like, Goldy, there's some really good people here. And I'm like, no, they're really mean to me, Vince. And of course, overreacting, drama queen. And then now that I have like the Patreon, then you see like these insanely awesome people like supporting you each month. And I'm just like, God. So now I just think that every single corner that I turn building a brand, I'm just going to shut up and I'm not going to say anything. And I had Lenny Lane on my podcast a few weeks ago and Alan Funk, and he was telling me about, you know, driving around with Kurt Hennig or Dusty Rhodes or this, that, the next thing. And he's like, he just shut his mouth. And I was like, man, I wish that you could have rubbed off on me. And I wasn't running my big fat mouth, you know, not learning. So again, 2020 hindsight, but I've learned a lot and just building the brand. I just want to continue to keep on plugging away. And if anybody's listening this far in the podcast, thank you. Please, will you go over to All To You on YouTube, Goldy, Goldy, All To You, and cross promote 2-Man Power Trip. And I don't think John's got his name up here, but like just cross promote that you heard about the video and the song on this podcast. So website is I can have my glasses on, tmptempire.com.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Just cross pollinate. That's what you got to do.
And which is great. I'm on Shane Douglas Triple Threat podcast on the brand. You're on the brand Goldie's Closet. You're very loyal to Vince Russo. I think that's very cool, and obviously very loyal to James Storm. I guess loyalty is a big thing to you. You've been friends with both of them for almost 20 years.
It is, and here's me. I don't even know like all of the stuff that you're on until till today and researching you the last couple of days. So I'm glad that I reached out because I'm again clueless. It's hard though to know everything that everybody is doing.
Well, Russo has so many shows on there now too.
Yes.
He got so many shows. Disco.
But
Jeff Jarrett got his stuff.
You're on Patreon, not on the Realm, or you're on the Realm?
No, Realm. So
okay, so you're on the same thing that I am then.
Yep. We're both on there with your buddy Shane, who you probably know from your days working.
More stories about Shane than I could even care to tell.
You know what's so interesting? I couldn't stop laughing. You messaged me one day and you said something. This was a while back, and you said something about Shane. And I said, oh, yeah, I'm on Triple Threat podcast, whatever, Shane. She's like, oh, my God. You said, I remember he beat somebody up in a bar. And I started laughing. So I said, Shane, this can't be true. I'm laughing, thinking that he's going to totally deny it because I just texted him. And he's like, he goes, nope, all true. And then he put like a devil horn like face, whatever. I was like, oh, I thought you were going to deny it. Say, not true, not true. You know,
I can.
Yeah, he really did.
I recall that he was he was very messed up that night. So if he remembers it, then he's really good with his stuff because I remember his eyes were like, and again, I am not criticizing any of these people for taking painkillers because I don't even know how they take the bumps that they do. But I just remember this particular night, he was a few sheets to the wind. And I remember sitting with my back to some guys. Shane was all the way in the back and it was at the ale house and they were calling wrestlers FAGGOTS. And they kept saying they're a bunch of this, bunch of maggots, bunch of maggots, bunch of maggots. And I just was like sitting with my friends thinking, and I just remember like, hey man, this whole place is filled with wrestlers. And I just don't think this is going to go over really well for you. So I'm just letting you know. Maggots, you're all about drunk. And I was like, bro, I'm serious. Like, I'm getting annoyed by this. I don't like you talking about my friends like this, but you're going down the wrong. And then the next thing I know, here comes Shane, the franchise. And I swear he might not remember it like this, but I remember them going through a window. Like, I remember a plate glass window and like the guy going through it and the glass being on him. Like, I just remember glass and blood. And saying, I told you so. And then like before you even knew what hit you, the cops were there and they had him cuffed. And we were all worried, like, is he going to come back? Like, because they were assholes. I mean, you don't just sit there and make slurs like that all night long and not expect to get your ass whooped. And it's just like, I think there was just too many people and too many eyes, or they didn't have cameras back then. So that's a good thing. You know what I mean? There were no cameras, but I remember he beat the shit out of that guy. And we were all just like, we were just happy for it.
Yep.
So many things like that.
He said he used two F words, the FAG word and the FAKE. So he said that he kept saying fake too. So
I don't remember
he remembered that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would concur with that, but like, I remember nobody put it past him we were all ready to pound these guys. They were sitting right behind me and it was all wrestlers. And this, like, some lay people in there. And then the other side of the ale house were like the normal people. But for the most part, every Tuesday, Wednesday night, whatever it was, pay-per-view in Orlando, we just packed that place and we stayed, we closed it down. And then everybody went to like the strip club afterwards or whatever was open. Of course, I'm like, I don't want to go there, but,
Right.
and then some of the guys went back and worked out.
Wow.
Yeah. They went back to the hotel because we were all checked out a lot of the times. If TNA was paying for it, well, then we'd stay. But a lot of us were paying for it ourselves. So we were like, we'll just check out before we go over to Universal Studios, get all of our stuff, and then do the pay-per-view, go to the ale house, and then it'll be really, really late. And then we'll just, usually we went back to the hotel and then we went out to the pool with like some wadded up t-shirts. So this is how it really went. And we'd sleep on the lawn chairs, like on the pool chairs until like 3:30, 4. And then here come the shuttles to take us to the airport, get there by 5. We had like a 5:55, 6:55 flight or something back to wherever we were going. I mean, we were all just dead. It was like The Walking Dead. Like everybody was zombies. And like, I just remember Johnny Devine was like always still up because he'd hooked up with some like nasty rat or something. Like there is funny stuff. So yeah, Shane, I've never talked to Shane since then, but I do remember that. I didn't remember the fake part though, but that's good that he remembered it.
Yeah, somehow he remembered that. But as we go towards the finish line, we head towards the finish here. Got to ask you this because you've done so many different things. Now even stuff that I didn't realize, the photography, besides obviously the music and the on-screen, but you've also been on several TV shows, Ted Nugent, CMT, the channel, TLC. How do you get in all these TV gigs? You do, every little bit of everything, it seems like.
Go hustle. Just hustle. Like there's so much work out there. You just have to keep trying. And I actually had something really special and amazing that was in the works. And then here comes COVID and it just wrecked everything. So I've been in touch with that network and the production company, and I patiently wait. There's an art to staying on people's radar, John, without being obtrusive or annoying, but it's all I can do every day. But just like email them, they're actually in London, and just be like, can we go? We had I had a couple of really big TV shows offered right before COVID, and both of them involved me living with families. So it just hell in a handbasket. So again, no hope. I expect that it'll roll around and it'll happen again, and some good things. I'll be able to right some wrongs as far as not being such an idiot. I had a really big show for 2 years on PBS last year, and then some foul stuff went and corruption, and they fired 13 of the general manager, my producers, good friends that were at PBS. And then, I'm just like, flailing around in the wind, but 2 years with a bunch of episodes in the can, it was ready to get released. And then it just all bagged out. But I had 2 years worth of filming and going back and forth to LA to Nashville again. This time, back and forth, a different direction, because I lived here, not in LA, and I got a lot of education. Sounds silly, but I learned like great makeup and hair, and from the real young crew, glam squad, and I learned a lot. And I learned a lot about promos again and camera, and sharpened my skill, my tool set. So I'm ready to rock and roll.
Awesome.
Great.
Now, obviously on Russo's brand, Goldy's Closet. So tell us just more about, what you got going on with the Patreon, the podcast. I mean, you kind of doing a lot right now.
I love the podcast. And are you still up for doing ours after this?
Oh yeah.
Okay. You're going to have to help me walk through some questions, because I have what I have, but like, let's see how good we can get it for kind of winging it. Like that's actually a rush for me to see what we can build and what questions, because I'm going to ask different things as a woman, crazy enough, that we can do. I'm looking forward to that. The podcast is every week. I love it. I love the people on Russo's brand, from his Patreon to the Realm, Mark at the Realm Network. Just everybody is just top notch. I love working with Jeff Lane. I love working with great people, and I just want to like love on them and suck them up forever. Like once you find a camp that you're cool with, it's just like, I want to keep doing better and better shows and production value and just get better and better. And then Patreon, Vince actually called me up and said, right when the COVID hit, like a week into it, he's like, yo, you got to do the Patreon. And I'm like, oh, what am I going to do? He's like, oh my God, what Like, bro, what else? What you everything? And I'm like, bro, like, what do I do? And he's like, oh, you could give dating advice. You could, and you gotta get with Ben. And I'm like, what am I gonna do with Ben? Oh, he's got the Hameen Media Group, and he started telling me about Ben. And Ben literally coached and mentored me for March, April, May, like 2 months, like every week checking in, wasting his time, and that, so now it's like a lot of the stuff that he was going to do for me, I'm not having him do right now. I'm like, you paid your dues with your counsel and consulting. And then when things get crazy, out of hand and I can't handle it anymore and manage it, then I'll come to you and have your company help me with some of the things. But for the most part, like we have a lot of patrons, but not so many that I can't I just answer their questions in line at the supermarket or taking a dump, whatever, I just find I enjoy talking to people and I enjoy the calls that we're doing. And I remember Vince telling me about Patreon years ago and saying like, so you're charging for a 15-minute call. And he was like, yeah, but it's never 15 minutes, and I'm like, how long is it? Oh, and I mean, we do our chat every week and it goes like way longer than it's supposed to. And the video calls go way longer than I'm not going to just cut somebody off because their time ran out. I mean, my time is valuable, John, but like the love that I have for these people, the trumps anything like, I'll just go pee and come on back and, come back to the session. They're great people. Patreon's awesome. We're trying to do some really cool shows on there. I like to be strong and sexy, but I just think there's more to females than just that. So yeah, you get some hot photos and all that great gimmicks and things like that. But there's also some really good shows that we're doing on Patreon. Daily Dump. It's like a Tosh.0 gimmick with a chick and I sit on a toilet. One of my bandmates is my co-host. We've got Tub Talk, me in a tub, basically Dr. Drew and Adam Carolla rolled into one. Yeah, I'm in a tub, shriveled up. It's not that sexy, even though I try to make it like that. But by the time I get out and then on camera, I can see like my tits hanging in my cellulite. I'm like, God, if people could see this, not even sexy at all. Tub Talk, we really hit like dating things and just stuff that dudes need to know about just looking better and feeling better and having more confidence and how to approach women. It's just tons of stuff. And then we've got one that's in the works called Lock Up Your Love, and it's a dating show. It's an online dating show. So it's just a new twist on the old dating game with, it's really cool, but it's really hard because a lot of people that apply are psychotic and I'm trying to field through it. And then I start looking at their walls and their social. I'm like, oh my dear God, I wouldn't put this person near anyone. Like they're horrible. Like, they just got some weird ass habits and things like that. And I'm like, I don't want to introduce them to some people on a panel and then just have them be, you can just tell if somebody's right in the head or not. So
yeah, it'll be your fault that it's
exactly. That they're crazy. Yeah. So a lot of the patrons are signing up for it. We just have to find good matches for everyone. It's not just about entertainment. Like I'm actually trying to find some people to be good fits. So
nice. So please, one last time, tell us about All To You, the big song, the big push.
It's just the big push is just please go to YouTube, look for All To You Goldy. That's all. It'll come up. It's a big head of mine. I think I've got a pink hoodie on. Click on it. It's on Russo's brand. It's hosted on Vince's channel. So if you haven't liked it, like it. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe. That helps Vince. That helps John. That helps the Realm Network. It helps all of us. Always do projects that are win-wins, but it would really help if you said, I'm here from Russo's brand and I'm here for John and I'm here for, let me get it right, 2-Man Power Trip. I'm here for all of this. And, I support suicide prevention. Or if you're reading this right now, you can even put like hashtag just stay. And that's the whole message of the video is just, if you're going through hard times and you're hurting, a lot of people are finding the video. They Google suicide or suicide prevention and it's coming up and they read through the comments. Like if you've done nothing this day or this week or this year or during the COVID, go leave a message on the YouTube comments so that somebody that's not feeling well can read through and see your message from a stranger. And you don't realize how your words are powerful. And maybe the way that you phrase something is different than I would, or John would, or somebody else listening. And maybe that's just the message. Maybe you have a story that you'd like to put on there. Maybe that's just what somebody needs to hear to stay and to realize that their life is worth living and valuable, and that there are numbers to call and there are resources. There are anonymous hotlines of people that they're professionals and this is their job. Just like, about wrestling, like this is these people's jobs to be able to identify words that you're saying when you call that number. What do you have to lose? Your life? Nothing else. Like, it's worth it. Call the number. I've called it. I've called the child abuse hotline too, since we did a PSA for that. They're really educated, kind, perfect people for that job. No asshole is going to be working at the suicide prevention hotline. I can guarantee you that. They're going to be very kind, and they're going to listen to what you have to say, and they can direct you to a place that can help you. So that's my soapbox. I'm off. That's my promo.
Great stuff. Now, please, what's all your social media, your Twitter, Instagram, and stuff?
At Goldy Locks Rocks, GOLDY LOCKS ROCKS. Yeah. Twitter, Instagram, and then Facebook is just getting to be a sadder story every day, John, isn't it? Jeez, Louise. God.
Yes.
Bunch of freaks on there. I mean, Twitter's freaky too, but at least you know that. And Instagram's a bunch of people looking at pictures.
Yep.
They don't want to engage in jack shit. I don't even know why I have Instagram sometimes. So people can just look at you and watch your story and do nothing.
Yep.
God.
Pretty much.
So weird, dude. It's the weirdest thing. But yeah, please find me on Twitter, especially, and say hi. All
right, awesome stuff, Goalie. Thank you for all the time, and we're going to get ready for round 2, I guess, in a little bit, right?
I'm going to just use the restroom and send you a link. Is that cool?
Perfect. Sounds great.
And what time do you work in the morning?
8 o'clock, but I don't go to bed usually till like 1 or 2 in the morning. I don't really sleep that many hours, so I'm usually pretty good.
All right, I'm going to use the restroom, and I'll send you a link in 5.
Yep. All right. Thank you, Goldie. Appreciate it. Yeah.
I appreciate your time, brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you.
All right, kiddo.